One guy has fixed more cars than most dealerships have ever seen. The other has spent 15 years running oil samples through spectrometer analysis. They disagree on something that's sitting inside your engine right now, and one of them might be costing you thousands of dollars. That's not a headline. That's just what happens when two people who genuinely know what they're talking about look at the same data from completely different directions. And if you've ever watched both of them, really watched both of them, you already know that the argument about 5W30 doesn't get resolved with a simple answer. It gets resolved with context, specifics, and a few facts that most people on either side of this debate aren't mentioning. So that's what we're doing today. No cheerleading for either camp, just the actual science, the actual data, and by the end of this, you'll know exactly what's right for your specific engine. Here's what makes this particular argument interesting. Both of them are right about parts of it, and that's exactly what makes it dangerous if you only listen to half the conversation. Scotty has been wrenching on cars since before most of his viewers were born. His whole philosophy is built on a simple idea. Modern manufacturers recommend thinner oils to hit fuel economy targets, not necessarily because thinner oil is better for your engine's long-term health. And if you're running a high-mileage engine, an older motor, or anything with looser tolerances, a thicker oil film might be exactly what's standing between you and premature wear. Motor Oil Geek is coming at it from a different place entirely. He's not working off instinct or shop experience. He's looking at NOAC volatility numbers, high temperature, high shear viscosity ratings, and years of aggregated oil sample data from independent labs. His argument is that the weight of an oil at room temperature tells you almost nothing about how it actually performs where it matters, inside a hot, pressurized engine under load. Here's the thing, they're both making valid points. And the place where things go sideways is when either argument gets applied as a universal rule. Scotty's argument, and he's made it loud and clear across hundreds of videos, is that 5W30 is heavier than what most modern engines were specifically engineered to run. Manufacturers have been steadily moving toward 0W20, 0W16, even 0W8 in some newer applications. His concern is that people hear thicker is better and reach for 5W30 thinking it's the safe, conservative choice, when in reality, running a heavier oil than specified in a tight tolerance, modern engine can actually cause problems. And here's where Scotty gets it right. On a modern turbocharged GDI engine, the kind you'll find in most vehicles sold after 2015, the oil passages are narrow, the tolerances are tight, and the VVT system depends on fast oil pressure response. If you throw 5W30 into an engine that was calibrated for 0W20, you're not getting more protection. You're getting slower oil delivery to critical surfaces on cold starts, and you might be starving your variable valve timing actuators of the fast-moving oil pressure. They need to function properly. That's a real concern. Scotty isn't making it up. There's documentation behind it. But here's where his argument has limits. And this is what Motor Oil Geek hammers on. The W number in a viscosity rating, the 5W or the 0W, only describes how the oil flows in cold temperatures. It has almost nothing to do with how the oil performs once your engine is up to operating temperature. And that's where engines actually spend most of their lives. Motor Oil Geek comes at this from a completely different direction. He's not talking about what feels right. He's talking about what the lab data actually shows. The number that actually matters once your engine is warm is called HTHS viscosity, high temperature, high shear. This is the measurement that tells you how thick your oil film actually is when it's being squeezed between metal surfaces at engine operating temperature, under real pressure, at real speed. And here's the part that changes everything. A 5W30 and a 0W20 can have dramatically different HTHS ratings depending on which specific product you're looking at. Some 0W20 full synthetics have higher HTHS ratings than cheap conventional 5W30s. Think about it this way. The viscosity grade on the bottle is like the label on a piece of clothing that tells you the fiber content. It gives you useful information about what you're working with, but it doesn't tell you how that fabric will hold up in the rain, under heat, or after 100 wash cycles. HTHS viscosity is the wash test. It's what actually happens under stress. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what oil is actually doing inside your engine. It's not just lubricating. It's forming a pressurized film between every moving surface, between the crankshaft journals and their bearings, between the pistons and the cylinder walls, between the camshaft lobes and the lifters. That film has to be thick enough that metal surfaces never actually touch each other. When the film breaks down, even momentarily, you get metal-on-metal contact. And metal-on-metal contact is what causes wear. Now, that film's ability to hold its thickness under heat and pressure, that's what HTHS measures. And what Motor Oil Geek has shown repeatedly is that the grade printed on the bottle is an incomplete predictor of that number. The actual formulation matters far more than the number on the label. Here's where the evidence gets really specific. Blackstone Labs has processed over 1 million used oil samples, and when you look at their aggregate data sorted by viscosity grade, something shows up that neither side of this debate likes to talk about. The data doesn't show a clean performance line from thin to thick. What it shows is that formulation quality, drain interval, and operating conditions account for far more variation in engine wear metals than the viscosity grade alone. In other words, a high-quality full synthetic 0W20 run at a reasonable drain interval in a modern engine. It was designed for consistently shows lower wear metal readings than a mediocre conventional 5W30 run extended in the same engine. The grade didn't save the engine. The formulation, the quality, and the service habits did. There's more. Viscosity improver additives, the polymers that give multi-grade oils their ability to behave thin and cold and thick and heat, are not all created equal. Cheaper oils use more of them, and those polymers shear down over time. That means a 5W30 that started life with adequate viscosity might actually be running thinner than a high-quality 0W20 by the time most people change it. This is called viscosity shear stability, and it's why a $12 conventional 5W30 and a $45 full synthetic 5W30 are not remotely the same product despite sharing the same label. Here's where I'll give Scotty full credit. For older engines, pre-2010 naturally aspirated motors with wider tolerances, his instinct about heavier oil is actually supported by engineering data. A 2002 Toyota Camry with the 2AZ-FE engine, an older Honda Accord with a K24. These motors were designed with more clearance between moving parts. They were spec'd for 5W30 from the factory. Some earlier ones even ran 10W30. As these engines age, those clearances widen further. Running a slightly heavier oil provides a measurably thicker film in those gaps. Blackstone data backs this up. So does the common sense of any machinist who's seen worn bearings up close. The conflict isn't really about whether 5W30 is good or bad. It's about the fact that both sides are sometimes applying a general rule to a situation that demands specifics. So what does this mean for the car sitting in your driveway? It depends on 4 specific factors. And if you get even one of them wrong, you're either overprotecting or underprotecting your engine. Factor 1, engine age and design. If you're driving a pre-2010 naturally aspirated engine that was factory spec'd for 5W30, run 5W30. If you're past 150,000 miles on that same engine, there's a legitimate case for sticking with 5W30, or even considering 10W30 in warm climates, especially if you're seeing any oil consumption. Factor 2, modern turbocharged engines. If you're driving a 2016 or newer turbocharged engine spec'd for 0W20, running 5W30 is not automatically safer. It may actually cause slower oil delivery and VVT response issues. Stick with the spec unless you have documented evidence for your specific application that says otherwise. Factor 3, where you live. Cold climates change the equation. In temperatures that regularly drop below zero, a 0W startup viscosity genuinely protects better on cold starts than a 5W. If you're in Minnesota running extended winters, the cold start protection matters more than it does in Phoenix. Factor 4, drain intervals. This is the one that overrides almost everything else. Whatever oil you're running, whatever the weight, cut your interval before you stretch it. Degraded oil of any grade is worse than fresh oil of the wrong grade. If you're going 10,000 miles between changes on a cheap conventional, stop. That matters more than the W number on the bottle. Pull your dipstick this weekend and look at what comes out. If the oil is dark brown to black before you've hit half your drain interval, your engine is burning it down and oxidizing it faster than it should. That's your sign to shorten the interval, not switch weights. And if you want to settle this for your specific engine, not just in theory, send a sample to Blackstone or another independent oil analysis lab, $30. It will tell you exactly what wear metals are showing up in your oil, whether your current grade is performing, and whether you need to change anything. That's more useful than any video, including this one. I know this doesn't give you the clean, simple answer you were hoping for, but honestly, anyone who gives you a clean, simple answer on this topic is leaving out the part that matters most. The real answer depends on your engine, your climate, your driving habits, and the specific oil in that bottle, not just the grade on the label. If this gave you something concrete to work with, drop a comment and tell me what you're running and what engine you've got. I'm genuinely curious what's out there on the road, and I read every comment. If you've had an oil analysis done, share the results. Those real-world data points are worth more than any lab test I can quote. Subscribe if you want the follow-up, because we're going deep on HTHS viscosity ratings and exactly which oils on the shelf are worth the money, and which ones are coasting on a label